If you're still moving, you ain't going to be dead.
But Ozzy, let me start with you. How are you? You've been through all this health hell.
I finally had my last procedure 2 days ago. I can't believe I've come to the end of it. I'm still back up. The main thing is over now. I'm done with the surgery, but it's been 5 years of absolute hell for me and the family. My family have been so supportive to me, you know. I couldn't have done it without them. It's been really a bad scene. I have Parkinson's, but I never think about it.
If you're still moving, you're not dead. It was a simple statement. One delivered as a joke, maybe, but hiding so much more.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest misconception. It's like so many people think, you know, what's happened with Dad over the last 5 years is a result of like Parkinson's, but it was the neck injury and the fall that he took in 2019. So
right. Well, actually, I was going to talk about this because, in fact, it goes back even further, doesn't it? We'll come to the Parkinson's in a moment, Ozzy. But if you go back, it actually goes back to when you had that horrendous quad bike crash in 2003.
Quad bike. Yeah. Well, I just got up and carried on, but I had a broken something in my neck.
Yeah.
And I carried on working with it until I had that fall. And then everything came undone, you know.
Just weeks before the world lost Ozzy Osbourne, the family gathered for one last, unforgettable conversation. Live, raw, and brutally honest. No fan could have imagined the pain behind Ozzy's famously wild grin, nor the secrets hiding in the shadows of the Osbourne household. But on that day, it all spilled out. The battles they fought in silence, the shocking truths only their closest friends knew, and the legacy left behind by the Prince of Darkness himself. For 5 relentless years, Ozzy's life was a cycle of surgeries, recovery, and moments where pain eclipsed everything else. In public, he was still the wild man, the living icon. But behind the scenes, he was fighting a war other legends rarely survive. Most fans assumed it was all Parkinson's, the curse that follows so many stars in their later years. But inside the Osbourne home, they knew it wasn't that simple. Ozzy's decline started with a fall in 2019, an accident that shattered the quiet illusion of safety. Yet if you follow the trail of broken bones and hospital nights further back, it leads to a different moment altogether, the near-fatal quad bike crash of 2003. One terrible second on a quiet English estate changed the fate of the world's most recognizable heavy metal frontman. That day, a reality show camera was rolling when Ozzy's ATV went airborne and landed on him. For a minute, it seemed like any other Osbourne mishap. Pain, swearing, get up, brush it off. But the injury this time was hidden. The main artery in Ozzy's arm was nearly destroyed, and paramedics raced to save more than just his music career. As Sharon heard the news from half a world away, panic tore through the family. The security team, in an effort to help, made a mistake doctors say could have cost Ozzy everything. They moved him before paramedics arrived. In hindsight, it was a near miss that still haunts everyone involved. Hours later, Ozzy lay in a coma, surrounded by tubes and machines, with his fate uncertain. For Sharon, nothing in her public life prepared her for seeing her husband's life hanging in the balance, completely out of her control. In that hospital room, she realized how fragile even the wildest rock stars truly are. Until then, Sharon Osbourne's world was defined by world tours, red carpets, and the electric chaos of being married to rock's ultimate rebel. But after that accident, everything changed. In an instant, she was forced to swap glamorous outfits for nights spent alone at his hospital bedside, a transformation echoed by so many who suddenly become caretakers for the ones they love. As the years passed, Sharon's world shrank until her entire identity revolved around caring for Ozzy. She admits that for a woman who once commanded stages and TV screens, it felt like vanishing from the world. And yet she never voiced a single complaint. "I love him," she'd say, even on the darkest days. Every summer that had once been a blur of festival lights became just another season spent listening for Ozzy's footsteps in the house, waiting to see if today would be better or much worse. Ozzy's children, Jack and Kelly, saw up close what their father's struggles did to the family. Suddenly, the unstoppable dad they idolized became frail and exhausted. Jack spoke about days spent just sitting by his father's side, quietly watching as Ozzy battled pain he could barely describe. Kelly would later say that helplessness defined those years, but so did unity. the Osbournes never abandoned each other. Instead, inside the walls of their home, they found a grim resilience in each other's company. Even humor didn't disappear. The old playfulness survived, sometimes as nervous jokes, sometimes as petty threats over haircuts and clothes, but always as proof that, even as the lights faded, the bond held firm. For many, the headline is still Ozzy's Parkinson's diagnosis. But hidden behind the tabloid stories is a vital detail almost everyone missed. Ozzy's illness isn't the typical form. Unlike names like Michael J., Fox, Ozzy's version, known as Parkin 2, is a rare genetic disorder he'd lived with since birth, though it remained dormant for decades. Scientists say this makes his journey and the challenges he faced unlike anything most people have heard of before. There's a kind of cruel irony in that. Even in illness, nothing about Ozzy was normal. It was always going to be a fight unlike any other. Despite the years of pain and treatments, Ozzy couldn't ignore his creative drive. Whenever he found the strength, he worked on what would become his final album, gathering legends like Elton John and Slash for a last stand in the world he loved. It was the ultimate paradox, the body breaking down, the artist within still refusing to quit. Ozzy knew he might never tour again. He watched from the sidelines as festival after festival carried on without him. While the world wondered if he'd had enough, Ozzy pushed through the fog of pain and medication, making music that sent chills through anyone who listened. Every note on that record became a lifeline, a way to tell the world that the old spirit was still there, raging against the dying light. If Ozzy's medical challenges weren't enough, the Osbourne family faced an entirely different kind of horror from the outside world. In 2021, Sharon's life was ripped apart by controversy that no one in the family saw coming. When a media storm exploded around Piers Morgan's controversial take on a royal interview, Sharon stood up for his right to speak his mind, regardless of whether she agreed with him. The backlash was vicious and immediate. Social media erupted with threats, not just against Sharon, but her husband, her children, even her dogs. Within days, Sharon was out of a job, removed from the talk after more than a decade. "You get fired for defending freedom of speech," she said later, describing how her entire reputation shattered overnight. The threats forced her to hire round-the-clock security. She couldn't even walk her dogs without fear. The psychological toll nearly drove her to a breaking point. Years of success, built and rebuilt alongside Ozzy's unpredictable career, dissolved in a matter of days. During that time, Sharon felt utterly untouchable, in the worst sense of the word. With her reputation in ruins and her future uncertain, she turned to therapy and unconventional treatments to try to heal. She credits Ozzy with helping her out of the darkness, yet even as she recovered, the sense of injustice remained. The Osbournes had always seemed untouchable, but now the family was fighting for survival from all sides, against illness, the relentless judgment of strangers, and the ghosts of their public personas. Through it all, the family's resolve only deepened. They stopped relying on public approval and built their whole identity around supporting each other, even if the world was cheering for their downfall. For those on the outside, the final interview with Piers Morgan looked like a simple chat, one more appearance from the craziest family in show business. But to their friends, the signs were impossible to miss. Ozzy was clearly fading, yet still defiant, his famous humor sharpening the darker truths just beneath the surface. He repeated the phrase that defined so much of his life: "If I can still move, I'm not dead." That stubborn survival instinct, the refusal to give up long after his body had waved the white flag, was what inspired not just his family, but millions watching around the world. Yet as the program ended, fans felt the undertone, an unspoken farewell, a final message from a man who'd given everything to his art, his family, and his fans. Behind closed doors, Sharon admitted the final years were about learning to let go. Ozzy, she said, just wanted to go home, to exchange the glare of spotlights for something softer and real. In the aftermath of his last surgery, Ozzy knew the battle was ending. His only wish was peace, surrounded by those who truly loved him. The Osbourne family, faced with the reality of time running out, found comfort in sticking together every day. "Our family has changed, but we've stayed together every day for the last 5 years," Sharon revealed. The pain of watching a loved one fade is universal, but few have had to do it with the entire world watching. Jack and Kelly Osbourne often get asked how they survived those dark years. Their answers are rarely about fame or money or the wild chaos that made their family a household name. Instead, they talk about losing the father they once knew, yet finding a new purpose in supporting one another. Kelly, in particular, never left her father's side, not during his hardest moments, not when exhaustion made him a stranger in his own home. For both siblings, unity became the only way through the chaos. And it was that unity, perhaps more than all the albums or scandals, that made the Osbourne family truly legendary. The pain Ozzy endured was impossible to ignore, but never once did he complain about his fate. "You never know what you've got until you've lost it," he said, echoing a sentiment millions felt in their own lives. Sharon struggled to watch her husband disappear bit by bit, but she drew strength from knowing that at least he never faced it alone. No matter how fragile Ozzy became, he remained a force, sometimes stubborn, always loving, and still capable of taking over a room, even from a chair. Those final days were less about anger or regret, and more about acceptance, learning to lean into every moment together, knowing the outcome had already been written. Even as his energy slipped away, Ozzy refused to let bitterness or self-pity define him. Time and again, he found humor in pain, grabbing whatever shred of joy or mischief he could. Sharon watched as fans around the world mourned the loss of the wild man, but for her, the greatest tragedy would have been facing it all alone. "He never felt alone," she said, a quiet triumph in her voice. The lesson was clear. Resilience doesn't mean never feeling fear, pain, or loss. It means refusing to give up on the people who matter most. In the wake of Ozzy's passing, attention turned to the family's ability to withstand crisis after crisis. From media attacks and public shaming to health setbacks no one could prepare for, the Osbournes never stopped fighting for each other. Fans speculate about what really happened in those final days, what truths were spoken only behind closed doors, what hopes or regrets Ozzy carried to the end. And while the rumors continue to swirl, one truth remains obvious. Nobody, not even the Prince of Darkness, was immune to the weight of real life when fame faded away. There's a kind of symmetry in how it all ended. A family that once thrived on spectacle discovered their biggest battle could never be won on stage or in the headlines. It played out in quiet moments between husband and wife, father and child, and in small decisions about when to fight and when simply to be present. Friends describe the last few months of Ozzy's life as a time of unmatched honesty, a closing of the circle, where even the most private wounds were finally shown to the world. Ozzy Osbourne's final words in that interview remain both ominous and strangely hopeful. "I just want to go home." At first, it may have sounded like a throwaway line, but those closest to him recognized the truth behind it. He'd spent decades on the road, living for the roar of crowds, yet in the end, all he needed was peace. Sharon, Jack, and Kelly watched the spark dim in his eyes, but not his spirit. He was always the head of the family, the rock everyone leaned on. To this day, fans debate which moment marked the true end of Ozzy's story. Was it the day he stopped touring? The last surgery that left him a different man? Or was it the on-air declaration, a farewell both hidden and in plain sight? The real answer is that endings aren't as clear as we think. The Osbourne family's story didn't finish when the cameras went off or the crowds went silent. Instead, it transformed, forging a legacy that's less about music and mayhem and more about love, acceptance, and the ability to weather even the most brutal storms. Rumors still circulate about what exactly happened behind the Ozzy Osbourne curtain, speculation fueled by cryptic comments, sudden silences, and the Osbournes' knack for keeping the world guessing. There's talk of unspoken diagnoses, family deals, and industry betrayals, stories that will no doubt surface for years to come. But in the end, maybe that's exactly as Ozzy would have wanted, never fully explainable, never fully tamed. The world lost a rock legend, but in the Osbourne household, the chaos, laughter, and scars remain, an ongoing testament to the power of family, the lure of fame, and the price we pay for living life at full volume. What truly happened during those closing months? Did the cameras capture everything, or was the real story one only the family could ever know? Ozzy Osbourne entered the world's spotlight as a mystery, and he left just as enigmatically, leaving behind more questions than answers, but never any doubt about the strength it takes to face the end, surrounded by those who matter most. And maybe that's the lesson the Prince of Darkness left behind, not just for his family, but for everyone watching. In the end, it isn't the crowds, the headlines, or even the legacy that matter. It's being together for every final moment, moving forward for as long as you can. Because as Ozzy said best, if you're still moving, you're not dead.